Thanks, Jason. Let's take a moment right now and get over to Sean Spicer. He is the RNC's Chief Strategist and Communications Director. We could not come up with a Wisconsin joke for your name, Sean. So today is the one day we're actually going to give you a pass. But don't worry, it's coming. It's coming. All right, let's talk about Wisconsin. People are saying that the main reason right now that Wisconsin matters so much is the fact that after today, if things go as folks think, meaning Trump does not win, you are looking more almost definitely likely looking at a contested convention. After today, Sean, after the votes, how much more likely is a contested convention?
As we get through each one of these contests, it becomes more and more likely that that's the outcome that we're going to have. There's no question that we're headed to June 7th as it is, where you've got 303 delegates that will be on the ballot, including delegate-rich California with 172. But as we get past Wisconsin, then we head to Colorado and Wyoming, and then ultimately New York on the 19th with 95 delegates at stake. Unless, Donald Trump starts to rack them all up, or Ted Cruz shows equally that strength, if there's a division in the delegates, which it kind of looks like according to the polls, then I think the likelihood of an open convention becomes greater and greater.
That's a big deal, Sean. I mean, let's all pause for a moment and note that would be a very big deal. Are you or the party prepared for such an eventuality, which, as you say, is getting more and more likely every day?
We are prepared, absolutely. I mean, we're doing everything we need to, from a party standpoint, to make sure that what everyone in America, and frankly everyone in the world, is going to see in Cleveland is a very open, transparent process by which the delegates who have been elected by the grassroots Republican voters will select the next nominee of our party and I believe the next president of the United States. But the goal for us is to make sure that this process that we're going to go through, which frankly most Americans have never seen. The last time that we had an open convention was 1976. The last time we had more than one ballot was 1948. So while a lot of people are going to be unfamiliar with the process, it's a process that we have followed since the 1800s. It's a process that's worked over and over again. We're following the same process that we've used through those centuries. And I think what we want to do is make sure that everyone walks through that process and the convention in Cleveland and says that they were treated fairly, that it was transparent, they saw it, and that the will of the delegates was carried out.
One of the first questions that a lot of folks are waiting for when you talk about the process and how this convention is going to play out is who's going to be allowed on the ballot. Are you confident that the rules at the convention are going to allow all three candidates currently running to appear on the ballot?
Well, here's what I know. Our job, again, is to administer a fair and transparent process. The delegates that have been elected will select among them individuals that will go on to the Rules Committee and determine the rules as they have for centuries now. The same process is being used. So they will elect members, one man, one woman from every state and territory. Those
right, but for John
individuals,
Kasich, fair is getting to the convention and letting people vote.
Well, again, our job is to allow these delegates to work their will. They did it in 2012. The Romney delegates created a rules package for that convention. The Rules Committee members in 2008 created a package for McCain. And you go back in 04 and 08 with Bush, et cetera, going all the way back through history. This is how the process has worked. So the process will work exactly the way it's worked for centuries. And it'll be the will of the delegates that will ultimately decide. But two things are certain. One, the delegates will ultimately choose this. And whoever gets a majority in any of these situations, whether it's at a committee vote or on the floor, is how it works. A majority will always rule. And so whoever carries the day will win every circumstance and ultimately be the nominee. Because in every scenario, whoever gets 1,237 delegates first will become the nominee of our party.
Sean, Ted Cruz, though, is making clear that in his mind, there are only two possibilities to achieve that math: Donald Trump or Ted Cruz. And he has pretty strong words for what will happen if one person is chosen who is not Donald Trump or Ted Cruz. Listen to what Ted Cruz is saying.
You know, this fevered pipe dream of Washington, that at the convention they will parachute in some white knight who will save the Washington establishment. It is nothing less than a pipe dream. It ain't going to happen. If it did, the people would quite rightly revolt.
Do you think it's true? Do you think the people would revolt if someone not named Donald Trump or Ted Cruz is the nominee?
Well, here's what I do believe. Number one, I think that it is highly unlikely that any one of that the nominee will not be one of the three individuals that is currently in the race seeking our nomination. I find that hard to imagine. But
highly
second of all,
unlikely or zero chance?
Well, of course, I can't. I mean, I can't say that I'm going to win Powerball tonight, so there's a chance if I buy a ticket that I'll win, but I think the odds are like 1 in 112 million, so I won't put that as a highly likely scenario. But I think secondly, and where I want to go back and clarify something is, Washington's not going to decide anything. The elected delegates from the grassroots are going to have their will be done. The majority of delegates will elect this. From California to Maryland to the territories, every one of those people that have been elected by the grassroots Republican voters will be the ones who do that. I don't have a vote. Reince Priebus doesn't have a vote. The votes are going to be cast by the delegates that have been elected by Republican voters. So the idea that anyone from Washington has a say is just, to the extent that the District of Columbia has delegates, that's true. But every other state and territory, those delegates that make up that total pool will ultimately have their will done. And that's where...
But Sean, that's not us saying that. That's Ted Cruz. What do you say to Ted Cruz then?
Well, I think a lot of, we entered this process, and John was right. I mean, we've got to pause and make sure that people who may not have understood the process or paid attention to it, I think there's a lot of pundits, a lot of folks in the media, a lot of activists, frankly, that haven't watched or haven't paid attention to this process or don't understand it because it's just existed for so long without people having to really understand certain things. But it's worked the same way for centuries, and I think as people learn about it, they recognize that how it's going to work, that their focus is talking to those delegates. I think Senator Cruz and Mr. Trump and Governor Kasich are both out there talking to those delegates, trying to get them to commit to them after multiple ballots, making sure that their people run for slots, etc. Organizing is an extremely important part of this process, and I think all three of the candidates are engaged in that right now.
Sean Spicer, I bet you Ted Cruz understands the process, and he still says there would be a revolt if it's not Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. But, Sean, thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you maybe a lot more about this subject in the coming months.